Thank you, Al. So brave. I wanted to introduce the speaker tonight. Her name is Patti O, and she is from Dana Point, California. And John N. and I are on the program committee, and we get to listen to all the speaker tapes and help select the speakers. And it is if you want to get on the Roundup committee, that is absolutely the funnest thing to do. So I was listening to Patti O's tape and was about 3 minutes into it and said she'd be great. And we called her and asked her to come. So can't wait to hear the rest of that tape. Come on up, Patti.
Thank you. I'm Patti. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a real alcoholic. I bring a bottle with me. I want to thank Peggy and the committee for inviting me and offering me an opportunity to participate in my recovery. And I really think Peggy took a risk. Not that she only listened to 3 minutes of the talk, but I believe I'm the only person sharing this weekend who has never, as far as I know, lived in Texas. So right away I feel unique and special, and that just is an indicator of my disease. I suffer from alcoholism. I don't suffer from alcoholism. I have alcoholism as badly tonight as I had when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous a little over 28 years ago. And as a result, I need to be with you more tonight than I needed to be with you when I came here on October 4th, 1975. I always talk to my sponsor before I do this. Al, thank you for reading. I understand you talked to your sponsor before you read also, and I think that it's an important thing to do before we come in front of a group of alcoholics in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, is to talk to our sponsor. And I talked to my sponsor, and she told me the thing that she always tells me. She said, tell him your name and tell him the truth. I've already told you my name. I'm not so sure, however, that I'm going to tell you the truth. And the reason for that is clear to me. I mean, I don't know about anybody else in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I never knew that February 7th, 2003 was going to be important. When I was out there practicing, which I think is a very silly word for what it is we do, I don't know about anybody else, but I really didn't need a lot more practice. But when I was out there, I didn't know that I was going to be expected to report to you what it used to be like. If I would have known when I was out there that I was going to have to report what it used to be like, I would have paid a lot more attention to my life. If I would have known I was going to have to report it, I would have taken notes. If I would have known about steps 4 and 5, I can tell you very clearly I would not have done a lot of the things that I did, but I didn't know that it was going to be important, so I didn't pay attention. And coupled with that, I'm a blackout drinker. I love blackouts. I love blackouts. I wish we could have blackouts sober. There was nothing more exciting to me than leaving work on September 12th, going back on September 18th, and discovering I'd been there the entire time. It was... It just makes the time between paychecks so much shorter. But I love blackouts, and not paying a lot of attention and being a blackout drinker makes reporting what it used to be like a little difficult. A lot of what I report to you has been reported to me by other people, and I just have to assume they were telling me the truth. I have a job. I had to get a fingerprint clearance, and I remember when I was being fingerprinted, I fingerprint really, really well. I am really good at fingerprinting. I've had a lot of experience. I know just how to roll with the printer. I don't go ahead of them. I don't resist them. I just roll really well. And I was being fingerprinted. I didn't want to raise any red flags, so I very calmly said to the woman taking my prints, I said, how far back are you going to check? And she looked me in the eye and said, from the day you were born. And I thought, oh, my God, it's like a fifth step, only it's in the wrong order, because they're going to know about it before I do. And and the book Alcoholics Anonymous says more will be revealed. It doesn't say how. So when my report came back, the woman called me up, and if you know normal people, when normal people are going to give us what they think is bad news, they get that kind of hesitancy in their voice. And she was really hesitant when she called me, and she told me that my report had come back. And she said, normally these reports are 2 or 3 pages long. And I said, and she said, yours was 57 pages. And she asked me if I wanted to see it. Well, of course I did. And I went down and read that. I know a lot more about what it used to be like, having read that report. So what I'm going to share with you is my perspective of what it used to be like. It may or may not even be true, but it's kind of a fun story, and I like to tell it. So I didn't have my first drink of alcohol until I was 12 years old. I'm really sorry I waited that long, but I had no idea what alcohol would do to me or for me. I don't remember ever thinking I can't wait until I drink. I don't remember ever thinking I would never drink. I don't remember thinking much about alcohol at all. And yet when I was 12 years old, I was on a camping trip in Southern California. We were camped on the beach. And I remember getting into the tent that Friday night, and I had a bottle of vodka in my pillowcase. And to this day, I don't know where that bottle came from. I've always believed it was the grace of God. But I've never been able to verify that. I remember pulling it out of the pillowcase. I remember being excited about having it. I had no idea what alcohol would do to me or for me, but I was excited about having that bottle. And I asked if anybody wanted any, and they didn't. And the reason they gave me for not wanting it was all we had to mix with it was grape soda and root beer. And I said, well, so what? And I took off the top, and I drank half the bottle, and I looked around the tent. Nothing had gotten different. Nothing had changed. So I drank the second half of the bottle, and that was to be the end of my social drinking. Never again after that day did I ever offer anybody a drink out of my bottle. And I don't know about anybody else in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I never had resentments until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I never had resentments out there, but one of my early resentments in Alcoholics Anonymous is I heard you talking about your first drink. And you talked about taking the drink, and you described how it felt in your mouth. And you described how it felt as it went down your throat. And you talked about it hitting your stomach. And you talked about it exploding and went to your fingernails and your toenails, and your pimples fell off, and you grew a few inches taller, and you became Prince Charles and Lady Di, and wonderful things happened to you. And that simply wasn't the case for me. I had my first drink of alcohol, and absolutely nothing happened to me for about 15 minutes. And at the end of the 15 minutes, the only thing that happened to me is I had to go to the bathroom. And it's my belief tonight that if you were to drink a quart of anything, in about 15 minutes you would have to go to the bathroom. So I got out of the tent, and I shuffled through the sand to the outhouse, and I went in and went to the bathroom. And when I got done and went to get up, I realized I was absolutely and totally 100% paralyzed to the toilet seat. I could not move. I couldn't even blink. I didn't feel my heart beating. And I was overcome with a sense of fear. And, of course, the fear was that somebody else was going to have to come use that outhouse. And there I was, paralyzed to the toilet seat. Now, later in my drinking, I did discover that 2 people can use the same toilet at the same time. If the second person is very careful about what they're doing, but... It is a visual, isn't it? I did somehow intuitively know that the body was made up of energy, and I somehow figured if I could gather my energy, I would be all right. And so I've always referred to it as my first formal meditation, because I sat and I gathered my energy. And when it seemed to be all balled up, when it seemed to be kind of centrally located, when it seemed to be all in one place, I just fell off the toilet, out the door, into the sand, and started crawling back to the tent. Now, of course, since coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, you have explained to me that my entire problem that night was my attitude. If my attitude would have been right, I could have had a fantasy I was in the Marines, I was being dive bombed as I was trying to get back to safety, and if my attitude would have been right, it could have been a wonderful experience. Now, in my own defense, I always have to tell you my pants were still down at my ankles. I had started to get sick. I couldn't quite get through it. I couldn't get around it. And under those circumstances, I think it's a little difficult to have a good attitude. I did somehow manage to get back to the tent. I fell in and I passed out. And when I came to in the morning, I realized nobody was in the tent with me, and I couldn't figure out where they went until my eyes cleared enough that I realized I'd been sick all night long. I'd hit the top of the tent, the side of the tent, the floor. I hadn't missed a square inch, and quite frankly, I didn't want to be in the tent either. So I got out of there. And that was my first drink of alcohol. And it was the most wonderful, marvelous, magnificent, fabulous spiritual experience I'd ever had. And it must have been because I put some amount of alcohol into my body from that day until the day I came to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't always get drunk, and I didn't always drink the kinds of things that you would classify as a beverage. I drank a lot of vanilla extract. I used to buy it by the six-pack. I remember the day the guy at the market called me over, and he said, Patti, I can't let you buy vanilla extract anymore. He says, I can't believe anybody bakes as much as you do. And I got cut off from that supply. I drank a lot of mouthwash. I drank a lot of perfume. Taboo became my after-dinner drink of choice. I still love Taboo. If you're wearing it, I may follow you too closely and lap at your neck. I just, I'm often tempted when I share to introduce myself and say I'm Patti and I'm a pig. I'm the person that came to your house and ate and drank everything in your bathroom, and that's. And I didn't know it was unusual. I didn't know there was anything unusual about this behavior. And when you think about it, really, how would we know? I mean, I don't know about you, but I wasn't talking about it. I became a bar drinker. I was a living room drinker, an office drinker, an alley drinker, a kitchen drinker, a dumpster drinker. I mean, I didn't really specialize. I just drank. But I love bars. I love sleazy, nasty, disgusting bars. I love the ones with the sawdust on the floor. I like them when the mirrors are cracked, so you kind of have to dip around to see yourself in there. I know a lot of you have probably never been to these kind of places, but especially those of you who count threads. I have no idea what that means. But I cannot wait to get home to find out. I just, somebody has got to, I've heard it twice now, counting threads. I'm up in my room trying to figure out how you do that. How do you, do I have the right number of threads on? I don't know how to do that. But, so you guys probably have not been in these places, but the upholstery's ripped around the bar where people have tried to hold on as they're falling off the bar stool. Or it's a nice touch if there's a broken bar stool in the corner. They used to be, I don't know if in Texas, California can't smoke in a bar anymore, which I really don't understand, but I used to drink in places where guys would take a piss against the wall. They can still do that, they just can't smoke in there. But they used to be full of smoke, and they had that wonderful used booze urine smell that I salivate still. I love that smell. I just... Sometimes when I'm in a cranky mood, I'll go by one of those places, open the door, take a big hit off of it, and it just perks me up for the rest of the day. But what fascinates me really about those places is the quality of people who drank in there. I mean, there were CEOs of really big companies, there were bank presidents, admirals in the Air Force, neurosurgeons. I mean, that's what they said they were, and I never told a lie in a bar, but we weren't sitting around having conversations like, well, what do you prefer, the red mouthwash or the green? What's your preference, Chantilly or Aqua Velva? I mean, we weren't having those kinds of conversations, so it doesn't occur to me I'm living any different than anybody else. I think I drink because I want to drink. I don't know that at 12 years old I'd put alcohol into an alcoholic body, and from that day on I had no choice. I think I drink because I want to drink. I had an opportunity to go to college. I went to San Diego State. I graduated with a 3.8 grade point average. I share that with you because in retrospect I can tell you I was a chronic, hopeless, helpless alcoholic. I was drinking on a daily basis. I'm a blackout drinker, and I graduated from college with a 3.8 grade point average. That almost killed me in Alcoholics Anonymous because when I got here I told you I was too smart to be an alcoholic. Nobody with a 3.8 grade point average could possibly be an alcoholic. I stayed in San Diego and took classes for a master's degree. I left San Diego State because I was offered a job in Chico, California, which is about as far north as you can get. And I thought that's why I was leaving. I didn't think I was leaving because I had another drunk driving assault charge pending. I I don't know how they do it here. I'll tell you what, in California, I'm driving down the street, the light comes on behind me, I pull over. The officer walks up, the first thing I do is slam my car door open. Now, my intent is to knock him in the private parts, and men are a little fussy about their private parts, so as the door's flying open, he jumps back to protect himself. And when he jumps back, it's really a good thing for me, because now he's far enough away that I can get him in focus. And I think, one of him, one of me. One of him, one of me, I think I can take him. One of him, one of me, I think I'll try. And I would go out the car for him, and it would be a really good fight. And I was a lot younger then, but it would be a really good fight for a couple of minutes. But I wouldn't remember that back at the car he had a friend. And the friend had a radio, and the friend would call some more friends. And pretty soon, be 4 or 5 of them, one of me, it's not fair anymore. I say, Uncle, and they take me away. And the next time the light comes on behind me, I pull over. The officer walks up, I slam the car door open, he jumps back to protect himself, he gets far enough away that I can get him in focus, and I think, one of him, one of me. One of him, one of me, I think I can take him. One of him, one of me, I think I'll try, and I would go out the car for him, and it'd be a really good fight for a couple of minutes, but I wouldn't remember the friend, the radio, and the friend's friends. Pretty soon, be 5 or 6 of them, one of me, it's not fair anymore, I say, Uncle, and they take me away, and I didn't do that once or twice. I did that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times. And I never remembered the friend, the radio, and the friend's friend. And that's the insanity of my disease. The insanity of my disease is I do the same thing over and over, and I think the results are going to be different. This time I'm going to get him. This time it's a fair fight. I never remember. But when you do that, they attach an assault charge. They don't even care that they won the fight. Drunk driving assault. Drunk driving assault. So I didn't think I was leaving because I had another drunk driving assault charge pending. I thought I was leaving because I had taken all the classes San Diego State had to offer. I loaded everything I owned into my car. I took 2 cases of beer, 2 bottles of booze, and I headed north. I got to Santa Ana, which really isn't the place you want to shoot for. I was out of booze and I was thirsty. I pulled off the freeway. I have a sense I can find the sleaziest bar in town without even looking for it. I pulled into the parking lot of this place. I walked in. It was full of smoke. It had that wonderful used booze urine smell. Willie Nelson was singing on the jukebox, and I knew I was home. That's as far north as I ever got. 88 miles from where I started from. Alcohol had become my mother, my father, my God, my friend, my lover, my companion, my support. And at some point it had turned. I've always believed it was in the middle of my first drink. But at some point it had turned. It began to strip me of self-esteem, self-worth, decency, integrity, honesty, pride. All the things we have going for us as human beings. And long before I got to you, it had taken it all. Alcohol controlled where I would live, where I would work, the people I would run with, and eventually the people I would run from. And I didn't have a clue. I thought I drank because I wanted to drink. I didn't know that I didn't have a choice. I didn't know that I put alcohol into an alcoholic body, and from that day on, I had no choice. I got a job in the profession of my choice. I rose very quickly to the top, and that, too, almost killed me in Alcoholics Anonymous, because when I got here, I told you I was too successful to be an alcoholic. I told you about the big oak desk I sat behind. I told you about the trophies and the plaques. What I didn't tell you about, I was in the newspaper business, and we often gave awards. And I know tonight it was because God gave me a gift, but we often won awards. And what I didn't tell you about was the times that I would come out of a blackout, standing behind a podium much like this in a room full of people holding an award, not knowing if I was giving it or receiving it. And so I would say thank you, and I would go sit down, and somebody would elbow me and tell me I was presenting it to the Kiwanis Club, and I'd have to get up and start over again. And I didn't tell you that. I just told you I was too successful to be an alcoholic. And I arrived in Alcoholics Anonymous as a result of what I pray God was my last drunk driving assault. In the newspaper, I'm a thinker. I think all the time. Every once in a while I hear us tell newcomers, don't think. I don't know how you do that. I think all the time. I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about something else. Then I start thinking about the fact that I'm thinking. Then I start thinking I shouldn't be thinking what I'm thinking while I'm thinking what I'm thinking. Then I try not to think about what I'm thinking. I'm just grateful I have a loudspeaker on my head, so that everything I thought came barreling out. I mean, that would be truly humiliating, but I think all the time. I have always been a thinker, and in my business, in the newspaper business, it was you were required to go to the bar. We were required to work 10, 12 hours. We worked long, hard hours. And then on top of that, you were required to go to the bar after work because that's where the news happened. That's where you got the leads. Now, I probably didn't want to go to the bar every night, but I was required by my job. And I have to tell you, I did get a lot of leads in those bars. The problem was I would write the notes on those little napkins, and then the glass would sweat, and then the ink would run. And then in the morning, I'd be trying to read that napkin, and I'd think, oh, my God, I'm going to have to go back again tonight. I hope that guy's there again tonight. And I would have to go back again the next night. And I forgot where I was going with that. This is one of the advantages. I just turned 55 last week, so now I'm using that to my advantage. They talked about turning the lights on. I said, oh, no, keep them down. I look much younger. Anyway, I'm leaving the bar one night, and I'm driving home, and I'm thinking. And I turned left onto my street, and just as I turned left, as luck would have it, my power steering went out. And I slammed into a car parked on the left-hand side of the street. And I turned the wheel just a little bit to the right to get back to the middle. I slammed into one on the right. And I turned to, and I slammed into one on the left, and I slammed into one on the right, and I slammed into one on the left. And I finally pulled into my driveway, and I was so relieved that I had gotten home safely. I just sat there in a moment of gratitude, and I finally got out of the car, and I went into the house, and I was in the house only a couple minutes, and the doorbell rang. And I thought, looked at my watch, it was 20 after 2. I thought, who is looking for me now? You know, people always want something from you. They never leave you alone. They're always after you for something. And I opened the door, and it was the Orange County Sheriff. And I said, do you know what time it is? What do you want? And he wanted me to come out on the front lawn. And I started telling him about my car. Well, apparently he's not mechanical. He doesn't care about my car. He points to all these cars that are just smashed out on my street. And I looked at him and said, and isn't it great that I got home safely? And he opened the back door to his car. And I'm in the newspaper business. I've been on the ride-along with the Orange County Sheriff. I don't have time for the ride-along. It's almost 2:30. I've got a 7 a.m. meeting. I can't go with you tonight. And he's insisting I get in the car, and I'm explaining why I can't. And he's insisting, and I'm explaining. And finally I thought, I better just go with the goof, because he's not going to leave me alone. So I hopped into the car. Well, he put me in the back seat, which is a little unusual on the ride-along, but he put me in the back seat. And because I have a reputation as a violent drunk, only I don't know I have that reputation. I don't know that when you get out of the car the way I get out of a car, you get a reputation as a violent drunk. I don't know that. So I hop into the car, and he shackles my ankles, and he cuffs my hands behind my back. And he starts taking me on the ride-along. Well, the ride-along with the local sheriff is through the neighborhoods and your neighborhood patrol kind of thing. And so all of a sudden we're on the freeway. I said, what are you doing? You do not go on the freeway on the ride-along. The ride-along is for the neighborhood streets. And he keeps going, and he's not answering me. And I'm talking to him, and he's ignoring me, and I'm talking, and he's ignoring. I don't like to be ignored. So in Southern California, our sheriffs have a fence between the front seat and the back seat. Somehow it protects them. And I'm being ignored, and the devil flew into me. And I don't know. I don't know if the devil ever flew into you, but the devil flew into me, and I just honked up a big one, and I just spit right on the back of his head. Right through that grate, just perfect. He didn't respond the way you're responding. In fact, he sped up. He started going faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. When the speedometer hit 100 miles an hour, he slammed on the brake. And I'm shackled and I'm cuffed and I can't break the fall. I went face forward into that metal grate. My glasses broke. There was blood everywhere. It was a mess. And I'll never forget that night when they were taking my mugshot. They kept referring to me as Waffle Face because I had the... And that's how it went. That's how it went. Day after day, night after night, week after week, month after month. It never got different. It just never got different. And I arrived in Alcoholics Anonymous. I drank during the time, I don't know if it was good or bad, but I drank during the time when the state of California didn't get their underwear in such a knot about drunk drivers. I mean, I would pay an attorney $1,000, which was a lot of money, but, he'd write a letter and make a phone call or whatever, and that would kind of be the end of it. I really never had any consequences. Well, I did lose my license, but you really don't need that to drive a car. It comes in handy in cashing the check, but it's not, But other than that, I really had suffered no consequence. One time I had two pending at the same time, though. My attorney was nervous. And if your attorney's nervous, I think you ought to worry. So I was kind of worried about the fact that my attorney was nervous. And I was sitting in this sleazy bar worrying about it, and I just kind of struck up a conversation with this guy, and as luck would have it, he worked in a mortuary. And I came up with a plan. I think alcoholics, we come up with really good plans really quickly. We went over to the mortuary. We got a death certificate. We put my name on it. We filled out all the pertinent information. We forged the doctor's signature, and we sent it to the court. Because they really can't expect a lot from you if you're dead. And I called my attorney, and I told him that he didn't need to worry. He didn't worry. I didn't worry. Nobody worried for about a month. And then I got arrested for drunk driving assault again. And that time the judge wanted to see me, and I really couldn't figure out why he wanted to see me. He never wanted to see me before, but he wanted me that time, so I went. And I'll never forget him looking at me. He said, "Miss Ochoa, tell me, how is it a dead person is standing in my court?" I shrugged my shoulders. I said, "I don't know, bad luck." And that's what I thought it was. It was bad luck. It was circumstances and conditions. It was the cops. It was my boss. It was the job. It was you and they and them. It was a lot of things. Never occurred to me. Never occurred to me it had anything to do with alcohol. Never occurred to me. On what I pray God was my last drunk driving, the state of California was starting to get their underwear in a real big knot about people barreling down the freeway at 80 miles an hour, blowing something in the breathalyzer above their grade point average. And at the time, I'm the kind of person, I'm very anal and very proud of it, but I'm the kind of person, I get released from jail, I get the arrest report and I read it. I find out where I made my mistake so I can practice that part so that next time I'll get that part right. And I always knew there'd be a next time because, you know what, the cops were always looking for me. They always knew what kind of car I was driving. They knew if I was driving my car. They knew if I was driving your car. They knew if I had a rental car. It didn't seem to matter. They were always looking for me, and they often found me. So I practiced field sobriety tests a lot. On what I pray God was the last one, I was doing a really good job. By this time, I know touch your finger to your nose means this. It doesn't mean that. I know how to walk. To this day, I can stand on one leg for 45 minutes. I have practiced a lot. And at the end of the test, when the officer asked me to say the ABCs backwards, the time before I had responded with, "Well, I can't even do that sober." Well, then I had just confessed. So they took me away. So on the last one, when he asked me to say the ABCs backwards, I said, "Okay," and I turned around. See, you think it's funny. He wasn't even amused. I was turned around. He cuffed me. He took me to Orange County Jail, and he put me in a cell with criminals. I mean, and there were real criminals in there. There were burglars. There were prostitutes. There were women who'd been arrested for beating their husband, which I don't think should be a crime, but they seems to be. I mean, there were real criminals in there, and I didn't belong there. So I tried to get a prison break going. I explained the plan very carefully to the prisoners. It was a simple plan. We're going to get our coffee cups. We're going to bang them on the bars. We're going to make a lot of noise. When the marshal comes to see what's going on, I'm throwing my arm around her neck. We're getting the keys, and we're getting out of here. I explained it very carefully and very slowly. And I heard something that I was to hear in Alcoholics Anonymous. One of those criminals looked at me and she said, "Why don't you sit down and shut up?" And I said, "Fine, then you all stay, but I'm getting out." I was going like a mad woman on those bars. There's a couple problems with styrofoam cups. This is about the time I usually like to remind you I graduated with a 3.8 grade point average. Styrofoam cups don't make a lot of noise. And the bars have a tendency to eat them up. And when the bars ate them up and it got to my knuckles and it got painful, I sat down and I shut up. I went to court on that charge. I was 26 years old. Went to court drunk. It's the only way I went to court. It's the only way I went to the laundromat, to work, it's the only way I did anything. Went to court drunk that morning, and the state of California was really starting to get upset about drunk driving, and as a result of my past record, I was being sentenced to 10 years in prison. In the middle of sentencing me, the expression on the judge's face changed. The tone of his voice got different, and I know he was as surprised at what he was saying as I was at what I was hearing. Because he looked at me and he said, I know this won't work for you, but I'm going to offer you one more chance, and he offered me an alternative. And part of that alternative was meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I wish I could tell you that I came here, I looked at the 12 steps, I knew they were the solution to the problems in my life, I worked them all in the first week and skyrocketed to recovery. And sometimes when nobody in the room knows me, I do tell that story, but but that isn't my story. I can tell you that I left the courtroom and I drank for 3 more months. I didn't drink a greater quantity. Physically, it had been impossible to drink a greater quantity of alcohol. But I drank with a sense of urgency and a desperation that I had never known. And on October 4th, 1975, the day before I was to go back to court to tell the judge what it was I was doing with the alternative he gave me, on that day I came to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't know what A&A was. I thought it was something like the PTA or Parents Without Partners, and a lot of days it is. But as far as I know, I had never heard the words Alcoholics Anonymous before. I didn't know what you people were going to do to me or for me. And my first meeting was a speaker meeting. It was about this size. I can't tell you who talked that night, but I heard 2 things. I heard, we don't drink between meetings. Well, I quickly looked around and didn't see anybody drinking in the meeting. And I thought, if you're not drinking in the meeting and you don't drink between the meetings, when do you drink? I don't know how that impacts other newcomers, but it made me really nervous. I thought, I could not understand why the judge sent me to a place where people didn't drink. I would have understood if he sent me to the Sears School of Safe Driving. I did not understand why he sent me to a place where people didn't drink. And the other thing I heard was that the answers were in this book, Alcoholics Anonymous. So after the meeting, I stole the book. I mean, God knows I need to have the answers. I can't tell you how irritated I was. I went home and read it. Not only could I not find the answers in this book, I couldn't even find the questions. And I thought, oh, dear God, I've stolen the wrong book, and I'm going to have to go back and get the right one. And that's what brought me back to Alcoholics Anonymous. Wednesday, with 4 days of sobriety, I came back to get the answer book. I don't think it matters why you come back. I think what's important is that you come back. Wednesday, with 4 days of sobriety, I came to my second meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was a small discussion meeting. And in that meeting, I heard, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it. And I looked around the room, and I looked around the room, and I looked around the room, and I could not figure out what it was you had that was so hot that I should be willing to go to any length to get it. I mean, look at the person next to you. Unless you're sleeping with them, what is it? I mean, I could not figure it out. And then I saw him. And I truly believe there's a him for each of us. This guy was a skinny little fellow. He was bald-headed. He wore baggy pants, not like the kids do today. I'm going through baggy pant withdrawals, actually. I work with teenagers who wear pants that have absolutely no relationship to their body size. They wear pants so big they could put a homeless family in there with them. His weren't that big, but they were big. He had tennis shoes on with no shoelaces, but the holes were there where they should have been, and he nodded out during the meeting. And I quickly assessed the situation. I figured he's nodding out. Folks who shoot heroin nod out, and I can probably do this thing and not drink if I can shoot a little heroin. So I found out where he worked, and the next day I snuck down to his office, and I said, Dick, I have to do this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. It's out of jail, and I don't know how to do it. And he told me if I would go to meetings and read the book and talk to other alcoholics and not drink, so I'll guarantee you won't get drunk. And if you don't get drunk, your life will get different. And I'm grateful he told it to me that way. He didn't tell me my life would get better. He didn't tell me my job life would get better, my finances would get better, my family life would get better, my relationships would get better, my sex life would get better. He didn't tell me any of it would get better, and I'm grateful, because none of it has. So, it's a little hope for the newcomer. But it's all gotten different. And as I stand here tonight, I can tell you from the top of my head to the tip of my toes, I have never had it so good. See, I don't know good from bad for me. I'm going through something I think is good for me, and it generally turns out to be bad for me. And I'm going through something I think is bad for me, and it generally turns out to be good for me. And I don't know good from bad for me. I've gone through times in my sobriety where my entire life has fallen apart. I've lost relationships, I've lost jobs, I've lost stuff, I've had hideously painful life experiences. And in those times, as I'm very dramatic, I always refer to it as the dark night of the soul. Unless, of course, you're going through it, then I just tell you to get over yourself. But but in those times, I don't drink and I don't die, and I don't drink and I don't die. I've moved beyond it to, in retrospect, see that every time I have thought my life was falling apart, what was really happening is it was falling together. And it had to be exactly that way for God to move me to where He'd have me be. I don't know good from bad for me, but I know different. And every area of my life is different than it was the day I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have never had it so good. My perception, and this is just my perception, I have 5 brothers and sisters who have a completely different perception of growing up than I do. My perception was that life is very painful. My perception as a small child is that people disappointed me and they let me down. People hurt me. My parents told me they loved me anymore. Their love and I'd have died. Their love was mentally, emotionally, and physically abusive. I came to believe as a small child that if I loved you, I would hurt you, and if you loved me, you would hurt me. And as a small child, I made a decision that I don't want to be hurt anymore. And I began to build a brick wall to keep you out. And I built a brick wall to keep you out, and that brick wall worked really, really well. It kept you out. What I didn't know about that wall is it made me a prisoner inside. I lived behind that wall in isolation and loneliness. And alcohol didn't allow me to come out and play. Alcohol just made it okay for me to be back there. But when you live behind a wall like that, you don't believe and you don't trust. But for some reason, I believed that old man that morning. And I can tell you tonight that that man that I thought was shooting heroin was sober longer than I'd been alive. And the reason that he nodded out in meetings is he had something inside that I didn't have a clue as to what it was. He had a serenity and a peace inside. He was right with God, he was right with himself, and he was right with us. And I didn't have a clue as to what that was. But I believed him, and I know tonight the reason that I believed him. I believed him because of the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous, one alcoholic talking to another. One alcoholic talking to another goes through that brick wall. It doesn't matter how deep that brick wall is, and it doesn't matter how long it's been there. One alcoholic talking to another goes through that wall. And I believed that old man. I had the book, so every night I'd open it to chapter 3, and I'd read the line that says, most of us are unwilling to admit we're real alcoholics. I'd say amen and close the book, and that was reading the book. I'd go down to the Canyon Club in Laguna Beach where they have AA meetings. I'd have a cup of coffee. On the way out, I'd say hi, Jim, to the manager. He'd say hi, Patti. That was talking to another alcoholic. My court program said I had to go to 2 meetings a week. I thought that was really obsessive. But I was willing to go to any lengths to stay out of jail. So I went to the 2 meetings a week that my court program said I had to go to. And the only thing I did right is I didn't drink. And I didn't drink, and I didn't drink, and I didn't drink. And I pray God happens to everybody that's new what happened to me. I've been in pain in the last 28 years. Sometimes life is painful. Sometimes things happen that are not just to alcoholics, but to everybody. Sometimes things happen that are just painful. And I've been through painful times in life in the last 28 years, but I have never been in the kind of pain that I was in, the pain of not drinking and not recovering. The pain of not drinking and not recovering is the greatest pain I've ever been in. And 8.5 months away from my last drink, that pain drove me to my knees. The pain of not drinking and not recovering drove me to my knees. And on my knees, I took the first step of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. I admitted I was powerless over alcohol. That whenever I ingest alcohol, I'm damned to live the same way day after day after day. That when I drink alcohol, I have no choices. If I don't like the way I live today, I can choose to live differently tomorrow. But when I drink alcohol, I don't have that choice. When I drink alcohol, alcohol determines how I'm going to live. And I'm damned to live the same way day after day after day after day. And my life had become unmanageable. I had no control in my life. I sat on a bar stool and I dreamed dreams and I planned plans and I ordered another drink. I couldn't get off the bar stool to get it done. My life had become unmanageable. Alcohol controlled every area of my life. Whenever I get into the ring with alcohol, I lose. Whether I'm fighting it because I'm drinking or I'm fighting it because you're drinking it. Whenever I get into the ring with alcohol, I lose. In my life, I was powerless over alcohol. My life had become unmanageable. And for me, it took 8.5 months of not drinking to get far enough away from my last drink to see the evidence. You all saw it when I came in. But you gave me the dignity to do what I had to do for as long as I had to do it. until I got far enough away from my last drink to see the evidence of my alcoholism. I wish I could tell you then that I looked at the rest of the steps, knew they were the solution to the problems in my life, worked them all in a minute and a half, and skyrocketed to recovery. But the truth for me is I've never worked any of the steps until my back was against the wall. The pain was so great it was do or die, and I had no other choice. Under those circumstances, I've become very willing to look at the next one of the 12 steps to recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I want to talk about the steps because that's what happened for me. What it used to be like, I think we all have the same story. We just acted it out a little bit differently. What happened for me is the 12 steps to recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. There is no way to get from where I was to where I am tonight except through the power and the magic of the 12 steps. And this is just my experience. If you have a different experience, it's your experience. This is my experience with the steps. I'm a loner by nature. Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't change your nature. What Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me is it's given me the courage and strength I need to do the things in spite of my nature. But I'm a loner by nature. By choice, I prefer to be by myself. I like sitting on my couch. I like fishing. Well, I like throwing and reeling. I'm not big at catching because then you have to touch them, and they're really stinky. But I like throwing and reeling a lot. I like to read. I like to. You know you're a loner if you don't like AA potlucks. That's generally the indicator. There's a line in the book that says we become disgustingly, even dangerously antisocial. I didn't become that way, started out that way. I have, over the last 28 years, developed a social skill. I will tell you I have used it already today. I'm fresh out. The most difficult thing for me to do is to be here with you. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength to continue to choose to recover. Cowards drink and use. I did that on a daily basis for 13 years. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength to continue to choose to recover, and I don't have it. So I need to be here with you. So at the end of the meeting when we pray, the person on my right can give me a little courage, the person on my left can give me a little strength, and you give me the courage and strength that I need in order to choose to continue to recover. You give me the courage and strength that I need in order to be with you. Because left to my own devices, I don't know how. Left to my own devices, I prefer to be by myself. I used to say that I had no problem with God. The truth is I have one problem with God. I believe we are all God's children, and I've always wanted to be an only child. That's my only problem with God. But for me, the power greater than myself in step 2, for me, was not God. Because being a loner, if I had come to believe that God was going to restore me to sanity, I would have sat on my couch. God would have flown over, sprinkled me with sanity, taken off to wherever it is God hangs out, and that would have been the end of it. I wouldn't have had to do another thing. Somebody else would be sharing with you this evening, and I would be home watching reruns of Law & Order Special Victims Unit. So for me, the power greater than myself was the action of steps 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I came to believe that through taking the action of the steps, I would be restored to right thinking. You see, I've spent my whole life trying to think my way into right living. That has never worked for me. As a result of the steps, I have been able to act my way into right thinking. And that's what I came to believe in step 2, that through taking the action of the steps, I would be restored to right thinking. I'm alcoholic. I will always be an alcoholic. Every once in a while I have a thought that a drink would be nice. It's a big drink, but a drink would be nice. When I have that thought, I clap. I say, thank you for your participation. I just go about whatever it is that I'm doing. I don't have to take an action on the thought, and even better, I don't have to beat myself up for having it. I'd simply move on to whatever the next right thing is. Step 3 for me, I hear people talking about step 3. You ask them what step they're on. They go, well, I'm on the 3rd step. And every day I get up and turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Well, I'm on the 3rd step. Turn my will and my life over to the care of God. But by about noon, I take it back. Well, I'm on the 3rd step. I'm turning my will and my life over to the care of God, except for my sex and finances, because I don't want to be poor and celibate. And I pretty much stay away from those people because I don't think they understand the step. I've worked in the same place now for the last 13 years. I drive the same way to work. I drive up Chapman Avenue in Orange, and I'm approaching Schaefer at the intersection at Schaefer. I got to make a decision. Turn right, turn left, or go straight. To get to my job, I got to turn right and make a decision, turn right, and I go straight through the intersection. So I make a U-turn, I head back towards Schaefer. Now I got to make a decision, turn right, turn left, or go straight. Now to get to my job, I got to turn left. I make a decision, turn left, and I go straight through the intersection. And now I'm starting to get irritated, and I make another U-turn. I head back to the intersection. I make a decision to turn right. I go straight through the intersection. I make another U-turn. Now I'm using the F word. I'm so irritated. I'm coming back to the intersection. I got to make a decision. To get there, I got to turn left. I make a decision, turn left. I take the steering wheel, and I do this. And the book talks about it. In essence, it says, although our decision was vital, it had very little permanent effect unless immediately followed by action. The decision I make approaching the intersection is important, but it has no impact on my car. If I don't take an action to turning the steering wheel, I'm going to still be making U-turns 13 years later up and down Chapman Avenue. And I believe... And my experience with the third step was exactly that. The step said make a decision. How do you want to live? Chronic, hopeless, helpless alcoholic? Or do you want to believe the people in AA are telling you the truth? Incomprehensible demoralization, hope. Despair, hope. It's not a tough decision. I think I'll go with hope. But the decision has no impact. What had impact for me was starting to take some action. The first right action I took was writing an inventory. And I did my fourth step the way the book says to do it. I made the columns. I wrote down everybody I resented, which basically turned out to be everybody who breathed air that I thought should have been mine. What they did to me, well, I wanted to tell you all my life what they did to me. I was really having fun. I was really sorry I waited this long because this was really a lot of fun. Third column, how it affected me. Well, it affected my self-esteem, my security. Well, no wonder I drank. If all these people did all these things to you, you'd have drank too. And I was really having a good time, but then in my zealousness, I accidentally turned the page to the big book. And hidden in the body of the text, it said something to the effect of referring to our list again we put out of our minds, the wrongs others had done, and we looked at our part. Well, took all the fun out of it, but I did that. I did that with my resentments, my fears, and my relationships. And for the first time I saw who Patti really was. I spent my whole life putting on a show. My disease manifests itself in justification, rationalization, and denial. Whatever it is I do, I explain to you why I did it. As I'm explaining it to you, I'm hearing it. As I'm hearing it, I'm believing it. Rationalization, justification, and denial. I had no idea who I was. I did my fourth step, and for the first time I saw who Patti really was. And then I looked at the fifth step and thought it was really a good idea for those of you who weren't raised Catholic. I was raised Catholic. We Catholics know about confession, and we know it doesn't work. And I figured they threw the fifth step in there for the rest of you so you could have the experience we had. I put my fourth step in the trunk of my car, and I drove around with a continual sense of impending doom. And, of course, the fear was I'd be rear-ended on the freeway, my trunk would fly open, my fourth step would be everywhere. And rather than do a fifth step, I just drove that way for a long time. And then one night I was in Los Angeles visiting someone that I knew in the program, and we were talking. As we were talking, I realized I was doing a fifth step. And I thought, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And I went to my car and I got my fourth step, and I did my fifth step with this woman. And when I finished doing my fifth step, that big brick wall I had built between me and you, that wall didn't crumble. Well, one brick came out of that wall. One brick came out of that wall. But every time I've shared with another alcoholic, another brick has come out of that wall. And tonight I have no brick wall between me and you. Well, I have a little styrofoam thing I throw up sometimes because sometimes I get afraid. Sometimes I feel insecure. I had an idea. By the way, I make up stuff all the time. I don't need your input either. I make up stuff all the time. The difference today is I generally run it by either my sponsor or one of you before I take an action on it. But one of the things I made up was I believe that if I work the steps really, really hard with enough passion, with enough zealousness, if I really, really work the steps, I would somehow skyrocket above human. That if I really worked the steps, I would never experience the feeling that I judged as negative. I would never have any fear. I would never have any insecurity. I would never have any self-doubt. I would just kind of be up here, hand in hand with God, me and my faith, blah, 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 blah. The truth for me, and it may not be your truth. You may have enough faith that you never have a feeling you experience as negative. I have a tremendous amount of faith. But what my experience is that in working the steps, I've come into my humanness. And as a human being, I sometimes have fear, insecurity, and self-doubt. The difference is I have you. And you take my hand and you walk with me through it. And every time you walk with me through it, you open new doors. When I try to walk by myself, I limit myself and I shortchange myself. Left to my own devices, I will continue to shortchange myself on a daily basis. When I let you take my hand and walk with me, you open new doors and you add to my life. So one at a time, that brick wall has fallen down between me and you. And sometimes I just throw up a little styrofoam thing because I get afraid. And then you come and blow it down, you take my hand and you walk with me, and you add to my life. And I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous for that. I just came here to stay out of jail. That's all I wanted out of this deal. If I'd have had it my way, I'd have shortchanged myself. If a single day in the last 28 years I'd have had it my way, I'd have shortchanged myself. Step 6 and 7 for me are the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. We tell new people don't leave before the miracle happens, and then we don't tell them what the miracle is. For me, the miracle is Step 6 and 7. I went home from doing my 5th step. I did Step 6 and 7 by mistake. I did not mean to recover this quickly. But I just by coincidence opened the big book to the part where it talks about Step 6 and 7. And you don't have to be a journalist to know the book Alcoholics Anonymous is very poorly written. Any newcomer will tell you. But that part about Step 6 and 7 gets kind of poetic, and I kind of got lulled into reading it. And when I became aware of what I was reading, I was in the middle of the 7th step prayer. And when I became aware of what I was reading, that prayer took the longest journey anything has ever taken for me, the journey from my head to my heart. And I finished reading the prayer, and exactly what it says in the book happened to me. I walked through the archway to freedom. I walked away from the person I had been all of my life to start to become the person God intended for me to be. And I believe that's the miracle. And I think too many people leave before they give themselves that chance. Too many people leave before they give themselves a chance to walk away from the person they've been all their life, to start to become the person God intended for them to be. The best I've ever described myself when I came here, I was an animal with latent human tendencies. That's what walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because you've been willing to share with me, I've become very kind, very loving, very gentle, very nurturing, very caring. Of course, now they're telling me it's codependency and I have to recover from it, but I love the person who I am. I'm tempted to write a book, Women Who Love Themselves Too Much. Steps 8 and 9 for me were conventional ways of getting rid of conventional guilt. I felt guilty because I was guilty. I did a lot of things to a lot of people for one more drink. The big controversy on and off in Southern California is I hear people say, I put my name first on my 8-step list. My disease is selfish and self-centered. That's who I am, selfish and self-centered. If I put my name number 1 on my 8-step list, I would have never gotten to number 2. The 8th step was not about me. Steps 8 and 9 were about you. Everything I did, yes, I made some hideously unhealthy choices. Yes, I did some ridiculously stupid things. Yes, I gave up everything for one more drink. The only thing I wanted to be since I was in the 4th grade was a writer, and I gave it up for one more drink. I have given up people, places, and things, everything for one more drink. Yes, I've made some hideous choices, but every choice I made was for me. Every decision I made was for me. Everything I did was for me. The amends weren't about me. The amends were about you. The amends were about amending my... It wasn't about saying sorry. I said sorry on my life. Sorry, sorry, sorry. And then I would do it again. Then I would get caught. Sorry, sorry, sorry. And then I would do it again and I would get caught. It wasn't about sorry. It was about living my life differently. And I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to live differently, so I come to you. And you share with me how to be a daughter. And I go to my mother's house and I practice that. And I come to you and you share with me how to be an employee. And I would go to work and I would take your experience with me and it would become my experience. And I would come to you and you would share with me how to be a parent. And I would go home and do that. And you would share with me how to be a sister. And you would share with me. And I came to you and you shared your experience. You gave me your experiences. And you allowed me to take them out into the world and have them become my experience. And through you sharing your experiences with me and allowing me to take them out in the world, I amended my relationships with the people in my life. Today I can tell you that before both of my parents died, I became a good daughter to both of them. I am a good sister to my brothers and sisters. I am a good mother to my son. I am a good employee to my employer. And as a result of your friendship, I am a good friend to the people in my life who are my friends. And I don't know how to do any of that. I sit on my couch, I sit on a bar, and I dream dreams, and I and I plan plans, and I don't get out of my house, and I don't get away from the bar. I don't get any of it done because I don't know how. And I come to the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you have helped me become the person who I am through sharing your experience with me, and I don't think I'm done yet. That's why I keep coming back. But I got right with everybody in my life, and as a result of that, I can tell you that I have the ability to nod out in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and probably do it way too often. Steps 10, 11, and 12 for me are the recovery steps, or the steps that allow me to continue to grow in Alcoholics Anonymous. 10 says the process is powerful. Keep using it. Keep writing about it, talking about it. Ask God to remove the defect, make amends if necessary, and then turn your attention to somebody you can help. What is it I can do for you? How can I be of service? Seems to me when I'm focused on my problem, God can't do a thing with it. But when my attention's focused on you, God can come in and take care of my stuff. And you don't have to be, you don't have to be chairman of a conference. You can stand at the door and greet the newcomer. The greatest commitment I've ever had in Alcoholics Anonymous was coffee maker. I was assigned coffee maker, and it's a prime example of how Alcoholics Anonymous works, because you have never told me what to do. You have never told me. You simply tell me what you have done. They made me coffee maker at my Monday night step study meeting. Biggest commitment in Alcoholics Anonymous. Most important. Try not to have coffee. I mean, it is incredibly. It became much more important when they gave it to me too. But they gave me this big coffee pot, and they gave me a big can of coffee, and they sent me on my way. So the following Monday, I arrived with my big coffee pot and my big can of coffee. Now, I live alone. I have never made coffee in a big coffee thing, but I figured, how hard can it be? Filled up the thing with water, opened up my can of coffee, dumped it in. Plugged it in, it would go bloop, go bloop. I mean, it wasn't going fast, but it would bloop. And the first person came to the meeting that night, poured a cup of coffee, took a hit of it, his eyeballs rolled back. He didn't say anything, but he didn't drink a lot more coffee either. Second person poured a cup of coffee, took a hit, and just stunned. And wasn't a lot of coffee drank that night, but nobody said anything. Nobody said who made this trashy coffee. This is the worst coffee we've ever had. This person needs to be hung. This person needs to be thrown out about. Nobody said anything. And after the meeting, when the secretary was giving his announcements, he said, we understand, we've come, we had a steering committee, and I don't know when they did it, but we've had a steering committee, and we have come to realize that coffee is the most important commitment in Alcoholics Anonymous. And because it's so important, we're going to assign Patti an assistant. And they assigned me an assistant coffee maker, and so I gave my assistant the stuff to take home. We both showed up the next week. I said, okay, I'll fill up the coffee pot. I filled up the coffee pot. He opened the can. I stood back while he put in about maybe an eighth of that big can of coffee. He did not tell me how to do it. He showed me how to do it. Alcoholics Anonymous, you have always shown me how to do it. You have never told me what I need to do. You have shown me what you have done. And I didn't come here for that. I did not come here for that. Step 11, I'm a very simple person. My prayer in the morning is very simply, thy will be done. I'm so naive, I truly believe the rest of the day is God's business. My job is to not drink, show up, and live life to the fullest, and the rest of it is God's business. My prayer at night is a little scary, or offer it to anybody who'd like to use it. My prayer at night is, dear God, please have people treat me tomorrow exactly the way I treated people today. And when I know I'm going to say that prayer tonight, it will hold me in good stead. And for me, it is much more powerful than the let me treat people today the way I want to be treated prayer, because my disease still manifests itself in justification, rationalization, and denial. And if I'm going to screw you, I can justify, you know what, I wouldn't mind getting screwed. If I'm going to... and quite frankly, I wouldn't. If I'm going to take something from you, I can easily justify, you know what, it's God's stuff anyway. I wouldn't care if somebody took something from me. Rationalization, justification, and denial, it's easy for me. So the prayer at night is much more powerful, and it will hold me in good stead. It keeps me from flipping people off. I still count, but I don't announce the number of items to the guy in front of me in the 10-item or less line at the grocery store. And step 12 is the greatest gift you've ever given me, an opportunity to take a little of my past and give it to another alcoholic. To look into the eyes of another alcoholic and say, honey, take my hand, come with me, sit in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you don't have to live that way a day at a time. My time's up. I know the raffle is most important, so I want to, I don't want to go over, but I do want to tell you, this story, and I don't know why, it just came into my head. I have a son as a direct result of my alcoholism. I never wanted to be a mother. I found out that is not adequate birth control. My son was 11 months old, and when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had no idea what. I've heard about men who didn't know about the birth of their children. It is truly humiliating for a woman to have the same story, but I don't know, he just popped out one day, and he was 11 months old when I got sober, and I didn't know what to do with him. I'd bring him to meetings with me. I didn't know what to do with him. And you would take him, and you'd bounce him, and you'd whatever, and at the end of the meeting, you'd give him back to me, and I'd bring him to the next meeting, the next meeting, the next meeting. My son's been to more meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous than most of the people I sponsor. He was raised here. You taught him how to love and be kind and be gentle and be nurturing. You also taught him how to con and manipulate. I'm not happy about that, but so you have to take the good with the bad, and everything he learned, he's learned from you. And if being in meetings was enough, if just sitting in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous was enough, my son would have never had a problem. But my son had a journey that he had to go on. And that journey involved alcohol and involved marijuana and it involved some other hideous things. And my son went on that, started that journey, actually had his first drink in a parking lot while I was in an AA meeting, which I think is a little hideous, but and he went on that journey that he had to go on, and I was his mother. And I probably did everything wrong. I'm not proud to tell you, but I have a MoneyGram card. I can send money at a discount. I did everything wrong, but he's my son. And it is very easy to release lovers. It's easy. Well, not easy. I've done that, too. It's not easy, but it's less painful. To parents, it is very difficult to release a child. And he did what he had to do, and he did what he had to do, and I did what I had to do, and an Al-Anon saved my life because I'm beating myself up because I can't not be there for my child. I could not be there. And an Al-Anon from Texas told me that all I needed to do was the best that I could do. That as long as my attention was on another alcoholic, that God would take care of my son regardless of what I did. And so I did what I did. And then he was back in Southern California. And on October 23rd, 2002, he called me and he said, Mom, I need you to come pick me up and take me to detox. And he knew the words. He knew what to say. He knew how to say it. He knew what I would respond to. And God did for me that morning what I could not do for myself. Because out of my mouth came the words, Patrick, if I come get you, I'm going to kill you. I cannot help you. If I come get you, I'm going to kill you. And I said, you just stay where you are and somebody will be there. And I hung up the phone and I called the man in Alcoholics Anonymous who I would not have called. God dialed the phone because I wouldn't have called this goof. And I called this guy and thank God he knew Alcoholics Anonymous. He wasn't one of those guys that said, you know what, have the kid call me and I'll go, and then I'll go. Have him call me and I want to know he's serious and then I'll go. He knew the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. He knew when the hand reaches out that he needed to be there regardless of whose hand was reaching out. And he took the address and he went and he picked up a newcomer and they went and picked up my son. And on October 23rd, 2003, my son celebrated a year of sobriety because of the... Because of the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous and because of the men and women in Al-Anon who have reminded me over and over and over and over that I'm powerless. That whenever I get into the ring with alcohol, I lose. That I'm powerless. I can 12-step any one of your children, but I cannot do a damn thing for my own. I can 12-step your lover. I cannot do a damn thing for my own. How can I be of service? What is it I can do for you? God can come in and take care of my stuff. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous to stay out of jail, and I have gotten so much more. I have a job that I love. I have people in my life who I love and who I can allow to love me. I have a relationship with my son that is beyond any relationship that I could have planned to have with my child. I have relationships with my brothers and sisters that are miraculous. I had relationships with both of my parents before they died. And I have a relationship with a gentle and a loving God who holds me in the palm of his hand and holds me in good stead. When I was 4 days sober, an old man told me if I didn't drink, I wouldn't get drunk. And if I didn't get drunk, my life would get different. And he didn't lie to me. And I end with this because it's been my experience, and I pray, God, that it's your experience. And it's a line in chapter 5 that Al read earlier. It's a line that says, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Thank you.